North Korea on Sunday calling the new UN sanctions against it a, quote, hostile act, vowing to press on with its nuclear weapons program without delay.
The Foreign Ministry of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea strongly condemns and fully rejects the UN Security Council's new campaign of sanctions as it is a crafty, hostile act. Whatever sanctions and pressure may follow, we will not step back from the road to build up our nuclear forces.
Last week, the UN Security Council added 14 citizens and 4 entities to its blacklist, which bans travel and freezes assets of those sanctioned. The move a response to continued missile tests by the Hermit Kingdom and the first sanctions resolution agreed to by the United States and China since President Trump took office. Michelle Nichols is Reuters United Nations correspondent.
The United States has convinced China to agree to these minimum sanctions measures on North Korea, and they've convinced them to do it in public to send a message to Pyongyang about the Council's unhappiness over its repeated ballistic missile tests. But diplomats have said that China is unlikely to agree to anything much stronger unless Pyongyang carries out another nuclear test or a long-range ballistic missile test.
North Korea is threatening a 6th nuclear test and has launched several ballistic missiles in the last few weeks, many of them splashing down in the Sea of Japan. On Sunday, the western Japanese town of Abu held an evacuation drill with a simulated North Korean missile attack as more towns take further steps to brace for what they hope will never happen.
You're watching Reuters TV. Here are your top stories.
British police named 2 of the 3 London Bridge attackers.
Arab countries are lining up to sever ties with Qatar.
Apple gives Siri a starring role at home.
This is Reuters Now.
British police have named 2 of the 3 London Bridge attackers. One was Khurram Shahzad Butt, aged 27, and was previously known to police and the domestic spy agency MI5. Butt was a British citizen born in Pakistan. The second attacker, named as Rashid Redouane, aged 30, who claimed to be Moroccan and Libyan. On Saturday night, the militants killed 7 and injured 48 in a rampage around an area full of bars and restaurants, driving a van into crowds of people and leaping out to stab passers-by with knives. Reuters' Paul Sandel is following developments.
London police say it's a fast-moving investigation. There have been a number of raids this morning. There were yesterday. 12 people have been arrested, more people have been detained, and they're trying to uncover the links between the 3 men who carried out the attack and whether they were part of a wider network.
British police were furious 2 weeks ago after details about the Manchester attack were leaked to US media, including the suicide bomber's name and photos of the scene. They'd asked the media not to reveal the militants' names this time round. But some newspapers did publish extensive descriptions of some of the suspects on Monday. Papers, including the top-selling Sun tabloid, said one of the attackers was a 27-year-old family man nicknamed Abs, adding that he'd worked for the fast food chain KFC and London's underground transport system. The Express newspaper said it had decided not to name Abs, but that he'd appeared in a television documentary posing with an Islamic State flag. Media reports also said that one of them had been reported to anti-terrorist police on at least 2 occasions and was married with 2 children. 18 people are still in a critical condition in hospital, details slowly emerging of the victims. 4 French nationals and 2 Australians among the dead or injured. The first to be named, 30-year-old Canadian Christine Archibald, who moved to Europe to be with her fiancé.
A simmering regional dispute boiling over Monday. Saudi Arabia joining Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain in severing their ties with Qatar, accusing their neighbour of supporting terrorism and Iran and meddling in their internal affairs. Yemen, the Maldives and Libya's eastern-based government quickly following suit, reopening a festering wound just 2 weeks after US President Donald Trump met Muslim leaders in Riyadh and took a hawkish line on Iran. Reuters correspondent in Dubai, Sylvia Westall, explains.
The developments today are serious. They're probably the most serious breach in the GCC for a generation. They include travel restrictions, restrictions on diplomatic activity, and are likely to affect Qatar's economy.
The three Gulf states giving Qatari visitors and residents 2 weeks to leave. Air travel in the region facing major disruption. Etihad, Emirates, Qatar Airways and Air Arabia all plan to suspend flights. Saudi Arabia also shutting the local office of Qatar's state-owned satellite channel Al Jazeera. Qatar denying Riyadh's accusations that it backs militants linked to Shiite Iran, and also the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic State and Al-Qaeda.
That moment when you're fleeing a terror attack, but you'll be damned if you're leaving your beer behind. This picture, taken during the attack in London on Saturday night, going viral as an example of British humour and resolve in the face of terrorism.
I absolutely loved the guy running with the beer. I thought that should have been photographed and should replace the Union Jack of, you know, you still have a bevy on the go. This is London Bridge. This is London prices. That's £6. You got to, keep it on the move.
Stand-up comedian John Hastings saying that laughing in the face of terrorism is the healthy response.
I think to immediately just stop and embrace the sadness and embrace the anger that these sort of things create feeds into what the people that committed this want from a society, and to mock them and say that they can't change how we feel about our society. You can't stop us from running with beer, I think is a really natural, healthy response.
While some news reports suggested Londoners are reeling in the aftermath of the attack, Britons used Twitter to tell the world that it will take more to bring the city to its knees. The hashtag Things That Leave Britain Reeling, revealing what really concerns the UK. Seat hogging on the London Underground. Pronunciation of the word scone, or should that be scone? And people who make the British national drink, tea, in the microwave.
And in true typical British fashion, everyone watching at home, it's begun raining, and as you can see, no one's using their brollies. Nothing brings London down. You can't stop it. These people have decided to wear shorts because it was sunny briefly this morning, and they're going to keep doing it. If the weather can't stop Britain, neither can these GD terrorists.
As Washington counts down to Thursday's testimony of fired FBI Director James Comey, one of the most anticipated moments on Capitol Hill in decades, the White House on Monday saying it won't try to stop Comey from testifying about his conversations with President Trump.
President Trump will not assert executive privilege regarding James Comey's scheduled testimony.
The decision not to invoke executive privilege means the Senate Intelligence Committee will be free to grill Comey on the events surrounding his abrupt dismissal by Trump last month as he led an investigation into the Trump campaign's ties to Russia, including a one-on-one in the Oval Office in February, at which, according to the New York Times, Trump may have asked Comey to end his investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his ties to Russia. Julia Edwards-Ainsley is on the story.
Executive privilege can be used to keep government employees from speaking about the president, and it can also be used to shield the president from having to comply with government subpoenas. Of course, though, the Trump administration would come under fire for using such a privilege because it would look as if they had something to hide.
Trump, in an interview, said he was thinking of the Russia case when he decided to remove Comey, the firing leading to the appointment of a special counsel to take over the case. Trump critics suggesting pressuring Comey would amount to obstruction of justice, a charge Trump has repeatedly denied.
Bill Cosby arriving for the start of his sexual assault trial Monday, accompanied by Keisha Knight Pulliam, the actress who played his daughter Rudy Huxtable on the popular family sitcom The Cosby Show, the program that cemented his image as America's dad in the 1980s. Noticeably absent from the courtroom, Cosby's wife of 53 years, Camille. Cosby stands accused of drugging and sexually assaulting former Temple University employee Andrea Constand at his home in 2004. Reuters correspondent Joseph Axe is in the courtroom.
The lead defense lawyer made it clear that their strategy is going to be going after Constand as much as possible. In addition to not reporting the assault for nearly a year, he said that she initially claimed they had never been alone together, before amending that later on and admitting that they had been. She also told police initially that she cut off all contact with Cosby following the incident. But according to McMonagle, records show that she contacted him 53 different times after the incident occurred.
Prosecutors plan to counter defense lawyers' arguments by introducing a psychologist to testify that sexual assault survivors sometimes engage in seemingly irrational behavior in the wake of their trauma. Constand's accusation remains the only one to result in criminal charges from the dozens of similar allegations from women stretching back decades. Constand and a second accuser are expected to testify in court proceedings that could continue at least 2 weeks.
A deadly siege in the Australian city of Melbourne on Monday. Police shooting a gunman after holding a woman hostage in an apartment block. Officers were called to the scene after reports of explosion and gunfire. When they arrived at the building, a man's body was found in the foyer with a gunshot wound. Reuters' Byron Kay is following the story from Sydney.
The crisis seems to be over. We've got one gunman dead, and we've got another man who we don't know who he is or what his relation to the situation is, also dead, and 3 police officers who have been injured, not life-threatening. Police have still cordoned off all the streets, and they are investigating to work out what has gone on.
Police say they tried to negotiate with the gunman who refused to let the woman leave. The tense standoff lasting for more than an hour before the man was fatally shot and his hostage rescued. A local TV network reportedly received an anonymous phone call claiming the attack was for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Police are now scouring for militant links.
Terrorism is one line of inquiry in relation to this particular matter. We do have our counter-terrorism command working with our crime department investigators. As I said though, it's early days and that's just one line of inquiry.
The incident comes just days after the 3rd militant attack in the UK in less than 3 months. Australia is a staunch ally of the US and its action against ISIS. In recent years, the country's been on high alert for attacks by homegrown militants.
A new chief concern at Asia's top security summit in Singapore over the weekend. Several countries raising the alarm over the growing threat from Islamic State and its affiliated groups in the region, as the city of Marawi in the southern Philippines remains a battleground between troops and Islamic insurgents. Reuters' Raju Gopalakrishnan explains what the spread of ISIS's influence could mean for Asia.
The fighting in Marawi has jolted the region. It's the first time that Islamic State-linked groups have taken over a town in Asia and engaged in a long drawn-out battle with security forces. The worry more generally is that after suffering reverses in the Middle East, Islamic State will pour its fighters into Southeast Asia to set up another base.
Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines say they're planning to step up intelligence sharing and begin joint air patrols while beefing up their presence on the water, as fears mount that ISIS fighters from Marawi could exploit open borders and escape to nearby countries. Security experts say Southeast Asia is increasingly vulnerable to attacks as ISIS suffers setbacks in Iraq and Syria and looks to push its franchise overseas as aggressively as it can.
Apple is trying to shake the image that it's a stale tech company overly relying on the strength of the iPhone. The world's most valuable company and its CEO Monday looking to create some buzz at its annual developers conference with this, the voice-activated HomePod. Reuters Apple correspondent Stephen Nellis explains.
It's a speaker with Siri in it. Siri is going to help you find new music and things like that. But the big deal is this goes right up against the Amazon Echo and the Google Home speaker.
Apple clearly trying to bring the sizzle back to Siri.
Here's the forecast for the next 10 days.
For the first time since its creation, the voice-activated digital assistant will interact with all other Apple products, breaking down a self-imposed privacy barrier as Apple listens to all the praise being heaped on Amazon's Alexa and Echo. Apple is betting on Siri to keep consumers from escaping to Amazon or Google as the tech battle extends beyond the phone to the home. But Siri is just part of Apple's strategy. There's also ARKit, a suite of software tools to help developers build augmented reality apps for the App Store.
This is the idea of overlaying digital information over the real world. Eventually, you're going to see it show up in parts of your life like, hey, which of these restaurants are good? And you hold the phone or something up, and it's just going to label them all and tell you what the reviews are.
But there's one area Tim Cook is steering clear of.
We're really thrilled to announce that Amazon is coming. Amazon is coming to the TV app and all Apple TVs later this year with Amazon Prime Video.
Any rumors of Apple getting in the media content business dashed. Cook clearly deciding Apple's fortune remains with expensively priced hardware.
I just want to take this moment to honor the people that were lost or that were taken. We love you so much.
Cheers and tears as London comes to terms with what happened on its streets on Saturday night. Some of the biggest names in music touched down in Manchester on Sunday to remember the victims of the attack here. Security tight and visible. 50,000 fans and well-wishers arriving under their watchful eye. Many among them had been at the Ariana Grande concert 2 weeks ago, at which a suicide bomber killed 22 adults and children.
I got hit in my upper left thigh and I had to go to hospital and have an operation on it.
Ariana herself back as promised, revealing she'd met the mother of 15-year-old Olivia Campbell, one of the school children who died at the arena.
I had the pleasure of meeting Olivia's mommy a few days ago. And as soon as I met her, I started crying. I gave her a big hug. And she said that I should stop crying because Olivia wouldn't have wanted me to cry.
She was also joined on stage by children from a Manchester school. The concert's message even more poignant after the attacks in London Bridge the night before, in which 3 attackers killed at least 7 and injured many. It's the 3rd militant attack in Britain in less than 3 months, but from those on stage and in the crowd, a defiant message of resilience and unity.
You're up to date. Check back later as stories develop.